Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a place that's stickier than your gym's sauna and more dramatic than a Real Housewives reunion, the medieval bathhouse. Yes, really. Forget scented candles, forget mood lighting, and forget that self-care playlist. Tonight, we're diving into the filthy, slippery, slightly scandalous world of communal bathing, centuries before loofahs, shampoo, or anything that could reasonably be called privacy. So before you settle in, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that white noise, and get as comfortable as possible. But let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what medieval people did when they desperately needed a bath? Was it really all naked nobles lounging around? Or more like a crowded YMCA changing room on discount day? Were bathhouses actually cleaner than just rolling around in mud? What did they scrub with soap, sand, or just wishful thinking? Was anyone safe from the wandering hands of the bath attendant? How did anyone get clean in a tub shared by a dozen of their smelliest neighbors? What exactly was floating in that water? And did people actually care? Could you go in for a simple rinse and end up with a side of medieval gossip, romance, or, let's be honest, lice? And why did the church suddenly freak out and start shutting these places down? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1380. You're standing outside a public bathhouse, clutching a suspiciously thin towel, and already rethinking every life choice that led you here. Good luck. You shuffle down a muddy alley, drawn by the sweet, confusing aroma of boiling water, cheap herbs, and 50 different varieties of unwashed feet. The bathhouse squats between a butcher and a blacksmith, just far enough from the church that nobody can judge you directly, but close enough that your soul still feels nervous. Signs of life, rising plumes of steam, raucous laughter, and at least one guy stumbling out in nothing but socks. It's not exactly the kind of spa you'd see in a lifestyle magazine. If you're looking for marble fountains and soothing whale sounds, you've made a very wrong turn. This is more like a cross between a Turkish bath and a really aggressive block party. The door itself is an adventure. Warped wood, sticky with condensation, and a handle so slippery that opening it feels like a challenge on a medieval game show. Every inch of this street is a sensory experience. You sidestep puddles of mysterious liquid. Rain, soup, something with legs, dodge a flock of squabbling chickens, and do your best to ignore whatever the butcher is tossing out his back window. Nobody makes eye contact. In a world where half your neighbors have seen you naked by accident, discretion is the only real privacy. As you approach, the sounds get louder, laughter, shouting, and the occasional yelp as someone tests the bathwater temperature with too much optimism. The bathhouse is busy, really busy. Think of it as the medieval version of rush hour at the gym, except instead of waiting for the treadmill, you're just waiting for a tub that isn't already full of strangers. On the stoop, a pair of old women argue loudly about whose turn it is to go in first. They're both holding baskets of herbs, clutching them like some kind of magical disinfectant talisman. And each claims the other cheats at foot washing. You're not sure if you want to join their conversation or just run. You hesitate at the threshold. Part of you wants to bolt back home to your cold, dirt-floored hut. But another part, the part that's been living in your own personal layer of sweat and livestock fumes for weeks, can't resist the siren call of even a marginally warm bath. Maybe this is why everyone ends up here eventually, despite the rumors, the risks, and the rapidly deteriorating towel situation. The medieval bathhouse is, if nothing else, an escape. A brief vacation from the endless grind of peasant life, where you can pretend, just for a moment, that clean is an achievable state. You hand over a few grimy coins to the attendant, whose only job seems to be looking unimpressed by absolutely everything. You wonder how many people have passed through this place before you today. A dozen? 100? The answer is enough to make you stop thinking about germs. The attendant slides you a wooden token, your pass to the world of communal soaking. It's still warm from the last hand. Try not to think about that. Around you, people bustle in and out, balancing buckets, towels, and occasionally a whole chicken that refuses to be left out of the fun. The steam pouring from the doorway clings to your skin, carrying the ghostly fragrance of rosemary, thyme, and things better left unidentified. There's a kind of unspoken camaraderie here. Everyone's come to lose their dirt, their troubles, and probably their dignity. For a brief second, you remember modern spas, white robes, infused water, soothing playlists. Then reality returns, and you're back in a medieval alley, clutching your single change of clothes, trying not to trip over a runaway turnip. Still, there's something magical about this place. It's noisy, chaotic, and vaguely unsanitary, but it's also alive. This is where secrets are whispered, news is traded, and winter's chill is banished, at least for a while. So you take a deep breath, adjust your expectations, and step inside, ready to face whatever the next hour throws at you. Congratulations, you've just braved the street full of steam, and in medieval times, that's practically a spa day. You duck inside, instantly hit by a fog of humidity and body odor. A grim-looking attendant eyes you up and down, demanding a small fee, a towel deposit, and, if you're new, an explanation for why you look so nervous. There's no keycard, just a wooden token that's probably been used more times than your local gas station bathroom. The reception area is a space that's doing its best to be welcoming, but honestly, it feels like an awkward combination of dentist waiting room and livestock auction. There's a rickety table, a battered ledger covered in water stains, and a quill so ancient you're afraid it might turn to dust if you sneeze. The attendant's gaze is relentless. Equal parts I'm judging your shoes, and I know exactly how many fleas you're bringing in here. His outfit is a masterpiece of stains. Some from water, some from herbs, and at least one that's probably blood. You try not to dwell on that one. He grunts, points to a sign written in the kind of Latin that suggests no one here can actually read, and then holds out a hand for your coins. You fumble through your purse, wondering if it's possible to look cool while extracting exact change from a medieval coin pouch. Spoiler, it's not. There's a small extra charge if you want a good towel, and another if you want your wooden token to not be sticky. You briefly consider going home, but the air is so thick with anticipation and humidity that you just give in. You're handed your towel, a strip of linen that's somehow both scratchy and damp, and your entry token, which is almost certainly older than you are. If you're lucky, the towel is only mildly stained with last week's rosemary. If you're unlucky, you get a towel with a mysterious hole and a faint whiff of something that once lived in a pond. Still, there's a kind of camaraderie in the suffering. Nobody in the queue looks thrilled, but nobody leaves either. Beside you, a group of regulars chat with the ease of people who've seen each other naked too many times. There's banter about whose back needs scrubbing, whose kid got caught peeking into the women's section, and who forgot to return a borrowed towel in 1374. Gossip travels at the speed of lice here, and if you linger by the check-in desk for too long, you'll know every scandal in the parish before you hit the steam room. The attendant, meanwhile, is a master of multitasking. He's part gatekeeper, part judge, part towel inspector, and, on really busy days, a one-man lost and found for wooden shoes. He shuffles through tokens, occasionally biting one to check its authenticity. You're still not sure why, and shouts instructions at newcomers. Leave your boots by the door. Don't put the soap in the bath. If you're here for the herbal rub-down, wait until after the dinner rush. You can't help but notice there's no real sense of customer service. The whole process is a little less five-star spa, and a little more surviving the DMV during a thunderstorm. The goal is simply to get you inside, paid up, and holding onto a towel that might, or might not, see you through to the other side. At some point, you realize you're standing next to a sign that says, in big, wobbly letters, "No horses in the baths." Clearly, this was a problem at some point. The walls are plastered with other warnings too. No fighting in the warm room, keep your voice down, report suspicious bubbles immediately, all reassuring in their own way. Finally, the attendant waves you through, never quite making eye contact. And you step forward, clutching your towel, your dignity, and your sticky token. You're officially checked in. The journey has only just begun. You leave behind the grim reception desk and all thoughts of refunds. Onward, into the fog. In medieval times, surviving the front desk was its own sort of victory. Welcome to a space with less privacy than a modern group text. Here, you undress in full view of strangers and acquaintances, desperately trying to remember the last time you wore underwear. Personal boundaries? Medieval people haven't invented those yet. The changing room isn't so much a room as it is a loosely defined corner separated by a threadbare curtain that might once have been white, now stained an earthy shade, best described as vintage turnip. Wooden benches line the wall, damp from centuries of sweat, steam, and the perpetual presence of at least one overly enthusiastic splash artist. There's no such thing as a private locker. Your possessions go into a communal basket, perched on a table with the structural integrity of a breadstick. You pray to every saint you know that your shoes will still be there when you return. Disrobing in this environment is an exercise in humility, group therapy, and athletic contortion. You peel off layer after layer. Cloak, tunic, shirt, whatever passes for underclothes, trying not to make eye contact with the local cobbler, or worse, the parish priest. For every move you make, someone is either staring, gossiping, or offering commentary about your posture. Privacy is traded for efficiency. People come in, get naked, and get on with it, like a conveyor belt of communal vulnerability. Next to you, a woman named Agnes casually folds her dress and begins a detailed conversation about chicken theft with the baker's wife, as if both aren't standing there in little more than hopes and dreams. Meanwhile, the town's blacksmith wrestles his way out of a tunic so tight it could double as armor, revealing a lattice of odd tan lines and at least 2 bruises shaped like horseshoes. Someone always cracks a joke about airing out the family secrets, and everyone laughs, mostly to cover their own awkwardness. There's an etiquette to the chaos. Stare at the wall, not the neighbor. Don't ask about suspicious bruises. Absolutely don't comment on the quantity or quality of someone's body hair. If you spot a tattoo, pretend you didn't. If you catch someone's eye, nod gravely, and get back to tying your belt with the dignity of a monk at confession. Meanwhile, a parade of children dart between legs, shrieking, wrestling, and occasionally vanishing behind the curtain with someone's left shoe. Your own bathhouse fashion is, by default, underwhelming. The linen wrap you're given, generously described as a towel, covers roughly 60% of what you'd like it to. You fold, refold, and pray for extra length, all while pretending you're used to this. You try to recall the confidence of modern gym-goers, but mostly settle for a look best described as accidental exhibitionist with existential dread. The changing room soundtrack is a blend of nervous giggles, grumbled small talk, and the steady drip, drip, drip of water. In the background, an attendant barks instructions. No throwing clothes on the floor, don't use your neighbor's soap, while managing a lost and found box overflowing with the medieval equivalents of mismatched socks and mystery undergarments. You wonder briefly if you'll ever see your best shirt again, but let it go. Attachment is for people with more laundry. All the while, people swap stories. Who brought the best herbs? Who tried to sneak a dog into the bath? Who had to fish out a runaway chicken last week? It's part confessional, part news hour, and part coping mechanism for the parade of naked limbs on display. There's a sense of camaraderie too. Everyone is equally exposed, equally ridiculous, and equally eager to get into the steamy sanctuary beyond. Eventually, you surrender to the atmosphere. Your last layer hits the bench. Your dignity is left somewhere between your knee and the woven basket. And you wrap yourself in the world's most disappointing towel. You join the steady procession towards the steam room, chastened, bonded, and one embarrassing wardrobe malfunction closer to being a true medieval citizen. Congratulations! If you can survive the changing room, you can survive anything the bathhouse throws at you. At this point, you're officially ready for whatever comes next. Hot water, gossip, and maybe, just maybe, a fleeting sense of cleanliness. You push open a heavy door, instantly enveloped by thick clouds of steam, and the sound of a lute being played slightly out of tune. Bathers mill about, wrapped in linen, sweating away worries, grime, and possibly most of their dignity. The air here is so dense you could carve your initials in it. Visibility drops to near zero, so you shuffle forward like a sleepwalker, squinting through the fog in the hopes that you won't trip over a carelessly discarded bucket, a snoring nobleman, or worst of all, the lute player himself. There's a logic to the room's geography, but it's lost in the haze. Benches line the walls, battered wooden tubs squat in the corners, and there's always someone strategically positioned closest to the source of heat. Like a lizard basking under a sun lamp, your first breath tastes like boiled cabbage, damp wool, and rosemary, with a hint of mystery. You consider turning back, but that would mean running the gauntlet of the changing room again, so you press onward, one cautious, towel-clad step at a time. The humidity wraps around you like a slightly aggressive grandmother, determined to squeeze the impurities out of your pores and your soul. A chorus of coughs and laughter echoes around the room. Someone is telling a joke about the local priest and a bucket of eels, but you only catch every other word as the steam swallows the punchline. Elsewhere, a merchant debates the proper temperature for maximum purification, while wringing out his linen with a flourish that suggests he's compensating for something. People here are experts in the art of public sweating, honed through years of practice, trial, and frequent error. You find a space on a bench and sit gingerly, aware that it's both hotter and damper than any surface you've willingly put your bare skin on before. The bench creaks. Or maybe you creak, it's hard to tell. Bathers all around you are deep in their own rituals. Some methodically exfoliate with rough cloths. Others simply sit in contemplative silence, eyes closed, achieving a sort of Zen state that probably requires more patience than you possess. A few brave souls attempt stretches that might be considered yoga if medieval medicine hadn't already declared stretching suspicious. At the center of the warm room is the mighty cauldron, a battered iron vat perched over a fire, kept simmering by a sweat-drenched attendant who looks like he regrets every life choice. He occasionally stirs the pot, sending up fresh clouds of herbal vapor, and tosses in handfuls of thyme, mint, or whatever else hasn't wilted into oblivion. If you're lucky, you catch a pleasant aroma. If not, you get something that smells alarmingly like feet. Either way, it's all part of the experience. You make small talk with your neighbors, comparing sweat rates and debating which side of the room is hottest. Local wisdom claims that sitting closest to the cauldron purges more sins, but the real result is usually just scorched thighs and a strong desire to switch spots. There's a rhythm to the room. People filter in and out, trading stories, sharing news, and, occasionally, bursting into spontaneous song. The out-of-tune lute is joined by a warbling tenor and a percussion section made up entirely of slapping towels. It's less a concert and more a fever dream set to music. Time blurs. You begin to lose your sense of self, slowly dissolving into a puddle of linen and aspirations. All that matters is the heat, the humidity, and the fleeting camaraderie of communal discomfort. You marvel at how this single room contains so much life. The old woman reciting prayers, the apprentice napping in the corner, the two children inventing new ways to weaponize soap. In the steam, everyone is equal, and everyone is, at least temporarily, clean, if not in body, then in spirit. Eventually, the heat becomes too much. You're slick with sweat, your towel clings like a needy barnacle, and you're convinced you've lost at least 3 pounds of regret. It's time to move on. With a final, heroic sigh, you rise, stretch, and shuffle toward the next room, leaving behind a bench-shaped outline of dampness and dignity. You're lighter, looser, and ready for whatever new bathhouse adventure and questionable hygiene practice comes next. In medieval times, the warm room isn't just a stop along the way to cleanliness. It's the heart of the experience, a place where the boundaries between public and private, comfort and chaos, all dissolve in a single cloud of steam. And honestly, it beats laundry day. Let's address the bathwater. It's murky, slightly green, and dotted with bits of mysterious floating debris. The hope is that heat will kill whatever's living in there. The reality? You're pretty sure the water is evolving new life forms as you watch. You take a step closer to the tub, trying not to make direct eye contact with whatever that is bobbing on the surface. The bravest souls, usually old men who've survived 3 plagues and don't fear bacteria, wade in with barely a shrug. The rest of you hover nervously, weighing the risk of infection against the certainty of remaining filthy for another week. You try to reassure yourself. It's not dirt. It's mineral content. It's not a bug. It's an herbal infusion. Repeat this mantra, and you might get through the day. No one in the bathhouse seems particularly bothered. In fact, the regulars boast about how a good soak in well-aged water toughens your constitution. Keeps you healthy, says the man on your left, right before he absent-mindedly flicks a glob of unidentifiable goo from his elbow. Builds character. Sure, if character means a permanent rash, you'll be a knight by dawn. You gingerly dip a toe, bracing yourself for contact with something that may or may not be vegetable. The water is surprisingly warm, almost comfortingly so, though comfort is relative in a world where your skin tingles from the sheer possibility of being nibbled on by whatever survived the boiling. You ease in, limbs disappearing beneath the surface, like you're being slowly claimed by a sentient soup. There are rules here, spoken and unspoken. You don't ask when the water was last changed. You don't wonder aloud about the mysterious scum-forming islands along the edge. You don't investigate the origin of the single forlorn feather lazily swirling in the current. The bathhouse attendant assures you it's all perfectly sanitary. After all, they skimmed off the top this morning. Skimming, you realize, is medieval for good enough. At least the water is hot, you tell yourself, sweat beading on your brow. Maybe that's enough. In a time before germ theory, the logic is simple. If it's not moving anymore, it's probably safe. This is the same philosophy applied to leftovers, relationships, and, apparently, communal hygiene. Every now and then, the water is refreshed. By refreshed, of course, they mean someone comes in, dumps a new bucket of hot water into the tub, stirs the mix like an enormous human stew, and proclaims it as good as new. The murk just redistributes itself, and everyone pretends not to notice. If you're lucky, they toss in a handful of wilted herbs, rosemary, thyme, maybe even a sprig of mint if business has been good. This does not change the color, but it gives everything a faintly medicinal odor that masks the underlying aroma of feet. There's a technique to bathing here. You aim for a spot away from the most suspicious clumps, and you try not to think about what's lurking on the bottom. Occasionally, someone gets ambitious and tries to clean themselves by scooping water onto their head. But most people just sit and marinate, banking on the hope that dirt cancels out dirt if you stew long enough. You chat politely with your fellow bathers, everyone agreeing not to mention the water quality. Instead, you discuss the weather, the price of barley, or whose goat escaped again. No one wants to be the person who ruins the illusion of cleanliness by pointing out that the water seems to be moving on its own. Every so often, you spot a brave optimist trying to fish out larger chunks with a crude sieve, usually to no avail. The rest of you offer supportive nods, pretending this is all perfectly normal, and maybe, for now, it is. Eventually, you forget your fears. The warmth seeps into your bones. You find yourself relaxing, letting the gentle current carry away your stress, and hopefully not your immune system. After a while, you'll convince yourself that you are in fact cleaner, or at least you're no dirtier than anyone else in here. So you close your eyes, lean back, and let the bathwater do its thing. Don't ask, don't smell, don't overthink. In the medieval bathhouse, sometimes ignorance really is bliss. Forget shower gel. In this bathhouse, soap means a rough hunk of animal fat mixed with lye, or, if you're unlucky, a gritty paste of sand and ash. Exfoliation is less spa treatment and more attempted murder on your skin. You stare at the bath attendant's offerings, heart sinking. There's no scented body wash, no lavender bubbles, not even a loofah in sight. Instead, you get to choose between soap A, which looks suspiciously like a half-melted cheese wheel, and soap B, which could easily be mistaken for a chunk of old firewood. Both smell like desperation and faintly of bacon. You pick one at random and try not to wince as the lye stings your fingers. There's a reason everyone's hands look like they've been sandpapered by an angry squirrel. If you're a local, you know the drill. The sand and ash scrub is the real test of medieval grit. It's handed out in little wooden bowls, ladled with all the care of a grumpy lunch lady. You scoop up a palmful, grit crunching under your nails, and get to work. The technique here is not gentle circles, it's more like aggressive barn cleaning. You attack your elbows, knees, and anywhere else you hope to someday see daylight. It doesn't exactly hurt, but it doesn't exactly not hurt either. The medieval mindset: if your skin isn't tingling, you're not doing it right. Around you, the pros are going at it with gusto, swapping tips about the best local ashes. Oak burns cleaner than pine, but nothing beats a good birch for getting out sheep grease. Some people team up, scrubbing each other's backs with an energy you normally associate with chiseling barnacles off a boat. This is what counts as bonding. A friend who won't judge you for flinching, yelping, or questioning your life choices out loud. The whole scene is somewhere between a communal exfoliation party and a low-level assault. The bathhouse resounds with the slap, slap, slap of hands, the rasp of sand on flesh, and the occasional muttered curse as someone finds a hidden sunburn or an old scab. Your skin starts to glow, possibly from cleanliness, possibly from minor abrasion. There's an art to not scrubbing too hard, but nobody's mastered it. Children are subjected to hurried once-overs by mothers who are clearly making up for lost time. Elders give advice that's mostly just threats. Don't be a coward. In my day, we used gravel and were grateful. The communal towel, already working overtime, is now a battlefield of flecks, flakes, and random debris that falls away as everyone goes to work. For those with a little coin to spare, there are upgrades available. The luxury option? Soap made with imported olive oil, rumored to come from Italy and possessing the rare gift of actually leaving your skin slightly softer than before. These precious bars are hoarded, traded, and occasionally stolen in dramatic towel-based heists. The black market for decent soap is real, and the price is steep. A whole week's wages, a pair of woolen socks, or eternal silence about that one time you mistook the priest's hat for a wash rag. In a place where body odor is the community's main export, everyone has a cleaning strategy. Some start at the head and work down, others tackle the feet first, hoping to at least enjoy the fantasy of clean toes. A few souls just embrace the chaos, scrubbing wherever the mood strikes. The unspoken goal is the same: remove 1 or 2 layers of medieval misery, even if it means sacrificing a few skin cells in the process. When you're done, your skin is red, tingling, and suspiciously smooth. You rinse off as best you can, feeling a peculiar mix of pride and low-level trauma. The water running off you is instantly murkier. Your personal contribution to the bathhouse's growing ecosystem. In the end, the tools of medieval cleanliness leave you raw, scrubbed, and surprisingly refreshed. You might not be as fragrant as a modern spa-goer, but you're tough, exfoliated, and, for the briefest of moments, just a little bit cleaner than you were before. And in the medieval bathhouse, that's the closest thing you'll get to a miracle. For a few extra coins, a bath attendant will scrub you down with all the gentleness of a sheep being sheared. Expect aggressive exfoliation, questionable small talk, and the distinct sensation that you're being prepped for either relaxation or roasting. You spot your attendant by the way he cracks his knuckles and eyes you with the professional detachment of someone who's seen things, horrible, fungal things. He's armed with a bristly brush in one hand, a bucket of mysterious soap in the other, and the calm confidence of a person whose job description has never included the word gentle. You hand over your coins with the same enthusiasm you'd show at a medieval dentist's office. The transaction is wordless. He gestures for you to sit, you obey, and the ritual begins. There's nothing quite like the medieval scrub down. It's equal parts spa treatment, cattle branding, and emergency delousing. The brush makes first contact with your shoulders, and you instantly understand why no one here has any skin left on their backs. You grip the bench and try to look brave, but each stroke is less relaxing rub and more buffing barnacles off a pirate ship. The attendant's technique is efficient and relentless, occasionally accompanied by the kind of humming that suggests he's either trying to soothe you or distract himself from the horror of his own day. Small talk is mandatory. The attendant asks how your week has been, how the harvest is going, whether you've heard about the baker's wife and that unfortunate cheese incident. You try to keep up, but it's hard to focus on medieval gossip when you're fairly certain your spine is being sanded smooth. He comments on your healthy layer of barn dirt as if it's an achievement. You thank him, mostly because you can't move your mouth without grimacing. If you spring for the deluxe package, the scrub is followed by a massage. Medieval massage is not what you'd call gentle kneading. It's more like being worked over by a particularly ambitious bread maker. The attendant's hands are strong, broad, and used to manual labor. He's basically kneading you like dough, occasionally pausing to crack your joints in ways you didn't know were possible. There's a good chance you'll leave taller, or at least with slightly different alignment. Other bathers eye your treatment with the kind of envy usually reserved for new boots or extra rations of butter. Some attendants have reputations for being especially thorough, red, slightly terrifying, while others specialize in the herbal rub, a massage/exorcism involving smelly ointments and brisk slapping that, if nothing else, clears your sinuses. If you're really unlucky, your attendant believes in therapeutic pinching, because nothing says self-care like being pincered by someone whose hands could crush walnuts. All the while, you're surrounded by the sounds of other scrubs, splashing, coughing, and the universal yelp of someone whose attendant has just discovered an untended sunburn. The bathhouse air is thick with herbal steam and bravado, everyone pretending this is normal, and not just a socially acceptable form of medieval hazing. When the scrub is over, you're left feeling equal parts exhilarated and violated. Your skin glows, not from oil or luxury, but from sheer, righteous friction. You glance down and see a layer of grime and regret circling the drain. Your body feels lighter, looser, and about 3 shades pinker than it started. If you close your eyes, you can almost convince yourself it was enjoyable. Almost. The attendant hands you back your towel, claps you on the shoulder, hard enough to make you stumble, and gives you a look that says, "See you next week, same time, same humiliation." You nod, grateful, embarrassed, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit grateful for the medieval miracle that is someone else doing the dirty work. You slink back to your bench, glowing with cleanliness and mild trauma, because in the bathhouse, customer service means you survived. And sometimes, that's all the relaxation you need. In the bathhouse, gossip travels faster than the plague. Here, secrets are traded along with scalp massages. By the end of your soak, you'll know who's cheating, who's in debt, and which neighbor was seen buying suspiciously nice bread. Forget town square or the market. If you want the real news, you come here, where the steam fogs up more than just the windows. The heat loosens tongues, and the absence of clothing seems to dissolve whatever threadbare sense of discretion anyone ever had. Conversation bounces from bench to bench, often louder than the lute player, and always more interesting. If a rumor is worth spreading, it gets its wings here, preferably before the bathwater goes cold. You're seated between a pair of chatty butchers who seem to know everything about everyone, and a baker's apprentice who is clearly hoping to pick up a scandal or two to share over the bread counter. The walls echo with whispers and laughter, tales of love triangles, feuding neighbors, and last week's disastrous attempt at making turnip wine. Someone in the far corner starts describing the recent accident at the mill, details growing juicier with every retelling, until by the end, the miller's cat is somehow both the villain and the hero. What's said in the bathhouse is never really private, but it's rarely repeated outside. At least, not until it's had a chance to mature, ferment, and become the stuff of legend. You find yourself the unwilling recipient of more unsolicited advice than you've ever wanted. Should you plant your barley earlier this year? The woman across the tub says yes, but the old man soaking his feet in the next corner insists the moon is all wrong for sowing. The debate grows heated. You make a mental note. Never argue with a man holding a handful of slippery soap. Everyone is a little more honest here. Maybe it's the steam, maybe it's the lack of pants, but people confess things in the bathhouse they'd never admit in church. The local merchant reveals that he's fallen behind on taxes. The priest's brother complains about a suspicious rash, which is quickly diagnosed by 3 different women with equally questionable remedies. A new mother receives a crash course in medieval childcare, half practical, half horror story. Occasionally, alliances are forged, trades agreed upon, feuds resolved, usually after someone's had a massage vigorous enough to shake loose their grudges. Even the town's rival bakers have a truce here, at least until someone brings up who really invented those honey cakes. In one steamy corner, a pair of nervous teens try to negotiate their way out of a parental-arranged marriage. Their solution? Stage a fake haunting in the hayloft. The plan is met with knowing smiles and the advice to wear garlic, just in case. You learn that there's a hierarchy to bathhouse gossip. The older patrons always have the best stories, told with the sort of dramatic pauses that suggest rehearsal. There are tales of old scandals, the love affair that brought down the town reeve, the mayor who was caught skinny, dipping in the bishop's private tub, and the mysterious case of the missing goat, which, according to legend, is still hiding somewhere in the rafters. The children listen wide-eyed, half terrified, half hopeful they'll one day star in their own bathhouse story. And then there's the real currency of the bathhouse: favors. Need your sheep watched? Looking for a loan until Michaelmas? Hope to borrow a pie dish or trade a turnip for a secret recipe? This is the place to ask. A discreet nod, a whispered promise, and you leave the steam room with half your week's chores, arranged by verbal handshake and shared towel. By the time you're ready to leave, you've heard a dozen stories, settled at least 2 minor disputes, and learned 3 new recipes you'll probably never try. Your skin is pruny, your head is spinning, and your mind is now cluttered with a lifetime's worth of medieval intrigue. And just like that, the social sauna does what no modern social network can. It leaves you both entertained and a little bit exhausted. You step out of the steam, carrying stories, secrets, and the deep cleansing knowledge that for all its grime and chaos, the bathhouse is where community actually gets clean. Contrary to what late-night cable might suggest, most bathhouses are single-gender most of the time, but mix-ups happen, and co-ed nights are legendary for scandal, side-eye, and at least one minor brawl over towel territory. On any given day, the bathhouse splits the schedule. Women in the morning, men in the afternoon, with just enough time in between for a frantic, slightly soggy cleaning session. Officially, this is to protect modesty and uphold virtue. Unofficially, It's because no one wants to be caught soaking next to their boss's wife while wearing only a nervous grin and a threadbare towel. The rules are clear, the signs are posted, or at least mumbled by the attendant, and most people follow them. Mostly. Still, there's always confusion. Maybe the church bell rings late. Maybe the attendant loses track of time. Maybe Agnes simply doesn't care and walks in anyway, causing grown men to dive for the nearest bucket while pretending to look for their sandals. These are the moments that become instant legends, recounted for weeks, dissected in excruciating detail, and usually ending with at least one person apologizing to a chicken. Then there are the notorious co-ed nights, announced with a wink and a nudge, when rules are relaxed in the name of community spirit. These events are less about hygiene and more about spectacle. The air is charged with anticipation, embarrassment, and a suspicious amount of perfume. Everyone brings their best towel. The regulars stake out their favorite benches early, while newcomers hover by the door, trying to calculate how many layers of linen it takes to be considered decent. Bathhouse etiquette on co-ed night becomes its own kind of dance. Eyes are kept firmly above the shoulders. Conversation is polite to the point of absurdity, and every cough is just a little bit louder than usual. There's always someone who tries to play it cool and ends up tripping over a loose tile, providing a week's worth of entertainment for anyone within earshot. The great towel debates erupt. Who's hogging the dry corner? Whose wrap is riding suspiciously low? Who dares to use the good rosemary soap when no one's looking? At least one couple will leave engaged, another will leave not speaking, and someone's great aunt will be telling the story for the next decade. For the most part, gender divides keep the peace. Bathhouse time is a rare sliver of freedom, a chance for women to gossip without interruption, swap recipes, and debate the finer points of wool versus linen. For men, it's an opportunity to one-up each other with stories of heroic fieldwork, compare battle scars, and pretend not to be interested in hair care advice. Children run wild in both sessions, inventing new games, making up dares, and sometimes hiding in the linen bin just to see who comes looking. Of course, the separation isn't absolute. There are always the unlucky few who arrive late, ignore the rules, or simply get lost in the steam. The result is awkward encounters, panicked apologies, and a renewed commitment to never making eye contact in the market again. And yet, the system mostly works. It keeps tempers cool, towels untangled, and gossip flowing in just the right proportions. Still, every bathhouse has its stories. The night the entire town ended up together, after the church bell broke, the accidental wedding proposal that started as a joke and ended with a goat in the warm room, the time someone tried to enforce the rules with a broom and instead started a polka. It's all part of the bathhouse law. In the end, the gender divide is both barrier and bridge, separating worlds, but uniting them in the shared experience of hot water, too much steam, and just enough chaos to make things interesting. In a place where dignity is always at risk, a little bit of separation might be the only thing keeping society from unraveling faster than a cheap linen towel. You wrap yourself in your own dignity, adjust your towel, and step out into the swirl of voices, grateful that for tonight at least, you're in the right place at the right time, give or take a rogue aunt or two. Bathhouses are the great equalizer. Nobles, merchants, and peasants all stew together in the same oversized tub. The only real difference is who gets the good bench and who gets splashed with the most dubious water. Here, in the swirl of steam, everyone sheds their rank, literally. The merchant prince sits shoulder to shoulder with the onion farmer. A lady of refined breeding negotiates elbow room with the tanner's apprentice, each pretending not to notice that everyone is, for the first time ever, equally underdressed. The walls that separate classes outside dissolve as fast as the last chunk of floating rosemary, and suddenly you're all just people in a bath, united by the shared hope that your towel doesn't fall off. It's an odd kind of democracy, enforced by little more than humidity and a lack of clothing. Even the local baron can't pull rank when everyone's kneecaps are on display. Sure, there's an unofficial hierarchy. Nobles drift toward the warmer, cleaner end of the tub, while peasants cluster near the door, hoping to get first crack at fresh air if someone opens a window. The best seat, a broad, smooth bench closest to the fire, is jealously guarded. Getting there early is the medieval equivalent of landing a window seat on a long-haul flight. Miss your chance, and you're left with a splintery ledge and an armpit-level view of the village miller. Still, for all the forced equality, old habits die hard. The nobleman tries to look casual, while quietly shifting any floating debris toward the peasant end of the tub. The blacksmith, muscles gleaming, tells tales of heroic labor just loud enough for the merchant's wife to overhear. The town reeve keeps an eye on everyone, as if waiting for someone to sneak in extra soap or claim a second towel. Blatant displays of luxury that could spark a debate hotter than the cauldron itself. But class rules only go so far. Once the first round of splashing starts, usually instigated by a bored teenager or an overly ambitious baker's boy, no one is immune. Nobles get soaked. Merchants lose their composure. Someone's cap goes flying. And for a brief, glorious moment, everyone is simply a wet, laughing human being. The bathhouse is the one place where even the mayor can't fine you for having fun. There's a special etiquette to bathhouse mingling, honed over generations. You compliment the noble on his exquisite towel, even if it looks suspiciously like yours with an extra hole. You thank the butcher's wife for not elbowing you during the communal scrub. You politely ignore the fact that the bishop's nephew has brought a duck for company, insisting it's part of his cleansing ritual. If someone mentions the quality of your bath water, you nod solemnly, pretending not to notice the floating evidence to the contrary. Conversations drift from politics to bread prices to the fate of last season's turnip crop. Business deals are struck, marriages arranged, and the latest town scandals recounted with relish. Every so often, a hush falls as someone of particularly high status enters. But it doesn't last. One good joke or poorly timed sneeze and the spell is broken, laughter bubbling up like hot spring water. You realize, as you soak, that the bathhouse is a world apart. Its own miniature society where everyone is equally ridiculous, vulnerable, and inescapably human. For once, you're not defined by what you own or what you owe. You're just another soggy citizen holding onto your towel for dear life. As the steam swirls around, erasing class and complaint alike, you start to think this is the closest medieval life gets to real luxury. Shared discomfort, shared laughter, and the profound relief that, at least for the next hour, everyone is in the same hot water. Tomorrow, you'll return to your place in the fields, the shop, or the manor house. But for now, in the echo of splashes and laughter, you're all just bathhouse folk. And that, in a world divided by almost everything, is about as close to equality as you're going to get. Don't be fooled by the steamy air. Bathhouses have a reputation. More than a few couples have met, and more, in the privacy of a curtained booth or during a particularly long massage. The local clergy is not amused. Officially, the bathhouse is about hygiene, health, and community spirit. Unofficially, it's the hottest ticket in town for a little covert romance and medieval matchmaking. The walls may be thin, but the rumors are thick. A glance exchanged across the steam, a towel accidentally swapped, and suddenly two people have something to talk about besides the weather, and whose turn it is to chop firewood. Even the slipperiest soap can't clean a reputation as fast as the local gossip. It starts innocently enough. Maybe you notice that every time you're here, the blacksmith's daughter always picks the bench across from you. Or perhaps the apothecary's apprentice spends just a little too long scrubbing your shoulders during the group rinse. Medieval flirting isn't subtle. It's more accidentally splashing someone with warm water and less sliding into their DMs. A smile, a shared joke about floating debris, an extra pat of herbal salve on a sore arm, It all means something, at least if the bathhouse grapevine is to be believed. For those who want privacy, there are curtained nooks, theoretically meant for massages or medicinal treatments. In practice, they're the go-to spot for a clandestine chat or an ambitious rendezvous. The linen curtains don't block much sound, but they provide just enough plausible deniability for two people hoping to discuss, very enthusiastically, the proper use of olive oil soap. If the attendant catches you loitering too long, you'll get a raised eyebrow and a pointed cough. But if you're subtle or tip well, discretion is usually part of the service. Not everyone approves, of course. The local priest preaches stern sermons about the dangers of communal bathing, warning that hot water leads directly to hot tempers and even hotter scandals. Mothers warn their daughters about men who promise herbal rub-downs with extra rosemary. Fathers watch their sons like hawks, ready to drag them out by the ear if necessary. Meanwhile, the regulars just roll their eyes. After all, what happens in the bathhouse rarely stays in the bathhouse. But it does make for excellent dinner conversation. Some romances are legendary. The tanner's boy and the brewer's daughter, united over a shared disaster, involving a slippery bar of soap and a toppled bucket. The baker's wife and the visiting merchant caught negotiating the price of buns behind the steam vent. Every so often, a tryst leads to an actual wedding, complete with awkward toasts about how they met in the hot tub and never looked back. More often, it's just a brief affair. Two people escaping the cold reality of medieval life, if only for the length of a soak. Then there are the near misses, the accidental encounters, and the cringe-inducing walk of shame through the changing room when someone's towel slips at precisely the wrong moment. For every romance that blooms, at least two more wilt under the weight of bathhouse banter. But hope springs eternal, usually on co-ed night, when all bets are off, the rules are a little looser, and the chance of a heart or a towel being stolen is at its peak. In the end, the bathhouse is less a den of sin and more a rare pocket of freedom. A place where people can shed their worries and their woolens and remember what it feels like to be alive, desired, and maybe just a little bit reckless. For every frown from the pulpit, there's a giggle in the steam, a new story to tell, and another happy couple who found love, or at least a decent back rub, where they least expected it. So next time you see someone grinning on their way out of the bathhouse, don't judge. Just remember, in a world of plagues and pottage, a little romance in the steam is sometimes the only thing keeping hope afloat. Feeling peckish? Many bathhouses serve snacks and drinks. Nothing says relaxing evening like eating a greasy pie while sitting half naked in a cloud of body odor. Try not to drop your bread in the bath. It's hard to believe, but medieval bathhouses are more than just social saunas. They're also full-service snack bars. Forget spa water infused with cucumber and lemon. Here, your options range from suspicious meat pies to loaves of bread so dense they double as flotation devices. Someone's always walking around with a tray, hawking boiled eggs, turnip pasties, and the kind of cheese that can clear a room faster than a fire alarm. The real centerpiece of bathhouse cuisine? The infamous bathhouse stew. Nobody quite knows what's in it. The recipe is a closely guarded secret, passed down through generations, mostly because no one wants to take responsibility for inventing it. What you do know is that it's ladled from a pot that's been simmering since last Tuesday, and it's thick enough to support a spoon, a knife, and, on a slow night, the attendant's keys. Some say it contains medicinal herbs for relaxation. Others say it's just whatever didn't sell at the market. Either way, one bowl and you're definitely not getting up for a while. Then there's the bread, essential to any medieval meal. The bathhouse variety is legendary for its durability. Drop it in the tub and it'll sink straight to the bottom, where it joins a soggy graveyard of last week's crusts. Still, there's comfort in tearing into something hearty, especially after a round of aggressive exfoliation. The bread may not be fresh, but it's filling, and it gives you something to do with your hands while you try not to make eye contact with the merchant across from you, who's very obviously eating pickled onions and pretending they're oysters. Drinks are a necessary part of the experience. Water is a gamble. You've just seen the state of the bath. Most people opt for weak ale, cheap wine, or, if you're feeling particularly self-destructive, a house-special herbal brew. The herbs change with the seasons and the owner's mood. Sometimes it's minty, sometimes it's suspiciously earthy. A single cup is enough to make you forget, briefly, that you're sharing air with 50 of your closest, dampest friends. Bathhouse etiquette demands caution. Eat with one hand. Keep the other on your towel at all times. There's always someone who tries to get fancy and balance a tray on their knees, only to watch a boiled egg plop into the tub with a dramatic splash. The correct response is to pretend nothing happened and silently wish the best to whatever bacteria just encountered lunch. Double dipping is discouraged, mostly because it's hard to fish a chunk of bread out of the communal bath once it's gone under. Still, there's a certain camaraderie to the meal. You share bites of pie, swap stories, and toast to surviving another week without dysentery. The communal table is an equalizer. Everyone's equally hungry, equally damp, and equally aware that this might be the only warm meal they get until Sunday. If you're really lucky, someone brought honey cakes to share, usually saved for special occasions or successful negotiations for the good bench. Of course, food in the bathhouse is always a bit of a gamble. The risk of crumbs in unfortunate places, greasy fingers on slippery tiles, or a surprise hot pepper in your pie keeps everyone alert. Sometimes, a particularly aromatic cheese is enough to clear the steam room faster than the local priest's sermon on modesty. In the end, dining in the bathhouse is just another part of the experience, a blend of risk, reward, and accidental seasoning. If you can finish your snack without dropping it, spilling it, or offending 3 different social classes, you've truly mastered the art of medieval multitasking. So go ahead, have another bite, take another sip, and remember, in the bathhouse, dinner and danger always come as a pair. Bathhouses aren't just for getting clean, they're also medieval wellness centers. Healers offer poultices, herbal steams, and questionable advice. Drink more mead, you'll feel better. Sometimes it even works. The moment you step into the bathhouse, you're just as likely to get a dose of unsolicited medical wisdom as you are a splash of hot water to the shin. There's always a healer in the corner. A woman with more scarves than teeth. Or a man who introduces himself as doctor, mainly because nobody else is brave enough to disagree. Their qualifications? A bag full of dried roots, a suspicious bottle of homemade tonic, and an unwavering confidence that would impress even the boldest snake oil salesman. If you have an ache, there's a cure. Sore back? Try a hot poultice, pressed onto your skin by hands that are somehow both gentle and terrifyingly strong. Stiff neck? Someone will offer to hang you upside down by your ankles for circulation. An unfortunate rash? That calls for a herbal steam, a complicated ritual involving mint, mugwort, and prayers muttered just loud enough to sound convincing. You leave smelling like a salad and, if you're lucky, feeling only slightly worse than before. Of course, treatments come with a side of entertainment. There's always a crowd gathered to watch a leeching session, where the patient tries not to scream and everyone else debates whether the leeches are working or just getting a free meal. The local barber surgeon sets up shop by the steamy window, sharpening his blades with ominous zeal. You may come for a bath, but you'll stay for the spectacle of someone getting a molar yanked with nothing but a shot of mead for anesthesia and a wooden spoon to bite. Advice is in endless supply. Some swear by daily dips in the hottest tub, convinced it'll chase away the evil humors. Others recommend cold water to shock the spirits back into line. One old woman offers you a paste made of ground turnip and garlic for your cough. Her neighbor says you'd be better off simply holding your breath until you forget what was wrong in the first place. There's an enthusiastic debate about whether honey or goose fat is the better cure for boils, ending, as all medieval arguments do, with someone insisting that prayer and vinegar will fix anything. Every now and then, a genuinely effective remedy emerges. The herbalists have a real knack for mixing up teas that soothe a sore throat or salves that actually take the sting out of a scrape. It's not all quackery, just mostly. You keep your expectations low and your gratitude high. If you have money to spare, you might even get the deluxe treatment. A vigorous rub-down with imported oils, a heated stone massage, or a cup of something that tastes like misery but promises to align your humors and make you irresistible to the opposite sex. Nobody's entirely sure if it works. But the placebo effect is strong in a room full of people desperate for any relief from aching muscles, joint pain, or existential dread. All this healing happens in public, of course. Modesty went out the window as soon as you walked in, so now you're wrapped in steam and community concern. The healer will happily share your medical woes with anyone in earshot. By the time you leave, half the bathhouse knows about your ingrown toenail, and 3 people have offered home remedies that all involve strong-smelling cheese. Somehow, in the chaos, real care emerges. People look after each other, applying bandages, fetching water, and offering the last of their precious mint leaves. There's no such thing as a private patient, but there's also no shortage of well-meaning advice or helping hands. You leave the bathhouse lighter in body and, with luck, only mildly confused in mind. You may not be any closer to perfect health, but you're buoyed by the sense of community and the possibility that, at least for today, you might just feel better after all. No bathhouse experience is complete without mentioning the tiny roommates everyone brings with them. Fleas float by like unwelcome croutons. Lice? They're just hoping you tip the attendant for extra attention. This is the part of bathhouse life that's rarely mentioned in polite society, but absolutely dominates casual conversation. How's the family? Is often followed by, and how are your lice? It's a shared burden, a medieval rite of passage, and the main reason why scratching in public is not only acceptable, it's expected. Everyone's doing it. Nobles, peasants, even the bathhouse cat, who has given up all hope of ever being flea-free. You settle into the tub, watching as the water ripples, not from your movement, but from the gentle paddling of one of your 6-legged stowaways. There's a moment of quiet horror as you realize that you, too, are contributing to the ecosystem. For every person who leaves the bathhouse cleaner, there's a louse or flea setting out on a grand new adventure. It's like Noah's Ark, but smaller, itchier, and considerably less divine. There's a whole etiquette to parasite management. You scratch your scalp with practiced nonchalance, pretending to ponder your grocery list while actually hunting for the source of that familiar tickle. Everyone knows the trick of leaning over the side of the tub, giving your hair a quick, accidental dunk, and watching the fallout float downstream. The communal water might not be clean, but at least it's democratic. No parasite left behind. If you want professional help, bath attendants offer special attention for an extra coin. This means a vigorous scrub with soap so harsh it could strip the paint off a wagon, followed by a nitpicking session with a wooden comb that looks like it was whittled by someone in a hurry. The process is swift, thorough, and mildly humiliating. Still, most people opt for it at least once a month, if only for the peace of mind that comes with a slightly quieter scalp. The herbalists swear by certain remedies. Smear your hair with rosemary oil. Rinse with vinegar. Sit under the hot cauldron and let the steam suffocate them. Whether or not any of this actually works is beside the point. Trying is what matters. If you're lucky, you'll be parasite-free for a few blessed hours. If you're unlucky, you'll be back next week, reinfested by your own pillow, your neighbor's child, or that one suspicious sheepdog who is always at the edge of the bathhouse, wagging and scratching in sympathy. Kids make a game out of it, of course. Who can find the biggest flea? Who can flick a louse the farthest? There's always a competition, much to the despair of their mothers, who are busy comparing notes on the best way to boil a comb or bribe a bath attendant into extra herbal rinses. Some parents shave their children's heads in the summer, a strategy that's both practical and excellent for embarrassing future teenagers. Even the nobility can't escape. You might see the lord of the manor in a private cubicle, eyes darting left and right as his valet picks through his hair with the intensity of a man searching for buried treasure. No one's immune, except, perhaps, for the local priest, who claims divine protection but is seen scratching just as much as everyone else. By the end of your soak, you accept the truth. You're never really alone in the bathhouse. Some of your fellow bathers will leave lighter, cleaner, and maybe even a little less itchy. Others, mostly the parasites, will leave with dreams of a better life, possibly in someone else's beard. And so, as you towel off and prepare to face the world, you do so with humility, solidarity, and a healthy respect for the indomitable spirits of lice and fleas. After all, they're survivors too. In the great medieval bathhouse lottery, sometimes you win cleanliness. Sometimes you just get a new set of tiny travel companions. Either way, you're in good company, itchy, but never alone. The local church has thoughts about all this public nudity and fun. Bathhouses become battlegrounds between sinful pleasure and holy fear, complete with sermons, suspicious glances, and the occasional attempted exorcism. At first, you might imagine that a little bathing, a little bonding, and a lot of steam would be universally celebrated. After all, isn't cleanliness next to godliness? Not so fast. In the eyes of the local clergy, the bathhouse is more den of temptation than temple of hygiene. Every steamy laugh is a possible sin. Every splash could be a gateway to the devil's slip and slide. The fact that half the congregation is here, wrapped in towels instead of penance, does not make it any easier for the church to ignore. On Sundays, sermons turn suspiciously steamy. The priest, who definitely hasn't been peeking through the bathhouse window, rails against the dangers of nakedness, idle chatter, and unwholesome mixing of the sexes. Tales are told of saints who bathed only with the angels, of holy hermits who cleaned themselves with a damp prayer and a withering look. "Beware the softening of flesh and spirit," he cries, making direct eye contact with Agnes in the third row, who still has steam in her hair, and the look of someone who just outlasted 5 rounds in the hot tub. Bathhouse owners develop their own countermeasures. There's always a crucifix above the door, a vial of blessed water on the front desk, and a half-hearted promise to close up shop during Mass. A few hang wooden signs that say, "No sinning," in hopeful, shaky script. Occasionally, someone brings in a priest to bless the tubs. It never quite takes. By Monday, the water's murkier than ever, and the regulars have already forgotten the holy warning in favor of debating the price of cabbage. For some, the church's concerns are legitimate. After all, bathhouses are not just about scrubbing elbows. They're places where secrets are whispered, flirtations spark, and more than one romance has been traced back to an over-enthusiastic herbal massage. The fear is that a clean body leads to a dirty mind, or, at the very least, a suspicious amount of humming in the street on the walk home. Any gathering that mixes heat, gossip, and exposed ankles is a crisis waiting to happen in the medieval moral universe. But most people see the conflict for what it is: a tug of war between real life and religious anxiety. The same neighbors who kneel in church each morning are the first to the bathhouse every Friday night. The priest might frown, but even he can't resist a little gossip by the fire. Rumor has it he once snuck in for a foot soak, disguised by a hood and an elaborate story about research for a sermon. No one believes him, but everyone loves telling the tale. Every now and then, the battle escalates. A church official storms the bathhouse, splashes holy water on everything that moves, and delivers a fiery speech about the end times, interrupted only by the splash of a duck or the clatter of a dropped soap dish. Attendants look on, unimpressed, and hand out extra towels to anyone who looks sufficiently dampened by the experience. Yet for all the bluster, the bathhouse survives. It adapts, sometimes adding a little extra decorum or staggering hours to appease the pious. But mostly, people just get sneakier about their soaking. Friends stand lookout by the windows. Children recite prayers while their parents soak. Just in case divine intervention is listening, everyone laughs a little too loudly when the priest walks by, but no one is scared off for long. In the end, the church and the bathhouse exist in an uneasy truce, one washing away the week's sins, the other washing away just about everything else. As you towel off and head home, you realize both have a point. Life is dirty. Faith is complicated. And sometimes the only way to stay sane is to soak in a hot tub and pray no one from the parish is watching. Running a bathhouse means managing hot water, hungry customers, grumpy staff, and surprise health inspections. Profits are high, but so is the risk of a citywide outbreak of itchy armpit syndrome. Behind all the steamy socializing and accidental nudity, the medieval bathhouse is a full-blown business. If you thought running a sandwich shop was stressful, try balancing a ledger when half your income comes from towel deposits and the other half from discretion fees. The owner, usually a wily entrepreneur with a talent for negotiation and a very flexible relationship with the truth, has to keep the place afloat against a tide of unexpected disasters. If there's a crack in the tub, a rival bathhouse down the road offering fancier herbs, or a sudden church crackdown on public lasciviousness, it's your job to fix it fast. Or at least blame the apprentice. Supplies are a never-ending headache. Every morning, water must be fetched, heated, and distributed among tubs, with strict instructions to keep the hottest water for the best-paying patrons. Firewood is expensive, and must be rationed with the ruthlessness of a besieged general. Then there are the herbs, rosemary for the rich, wilted parsley for the rest, and whatever you can sweep off the market floor for the late-night crowd. Soap is always in short supply. You guard your stash like it's the royal treasury, locking it away each night and counting bars like gold coins. Staffing is another ordeal. Every bathhouse has its own cast of characters. The dour towel attendant, the enthusiastic, but slightly too chatty, scrubber, the silent bucket, hauler who knows everyone's secrets, and the herbalist who claims to have a cure for everything, including, suspiciously, hangovers caused by bathhouse wine. There's a pecking order, and newcomers have to prove themselves. Survival of the fittest applies to staff just as much as to customers. Drop a bucket, spill the stew, or let the best towel go missing, and you're on onion peeling duty for a week. And then there are the truly weird jobs. Someone has to skim the bathwater, fishing out lost buttons, combs, and the occasional runaway eel. Another unlucky soul checks the drains for clogs. A hazardous position, sometimes paid in extra bread, sometimes just in respect. On busy nights, a designated peacekeeper patrols the changing room, keeping towel disputes and romantic liaisons to a minimum. If there's a festival in town, you might even hire a lute player whose job is to make enough noise to drown out the sound of splashing, arguing, and the one regular who snores in the sauna. Health inspections are rare but terrifying. Word spreads fast when a city official is spotted approaching, and within minutes, the place is cleaner than it's been all year. Benches are scrubbed, buckets are hidden, and everyone suddenly remembers to look modest. Of course, the inspection is less about actual hygiene and more about slipping a few coins into the right hands. But for a brief moment, even the bathhouse mouse dons its best manners. For all the chaos, running a bathhouse is lucrative work. People pay for warmth, for company, and, above all, for the fleeting illusion of being clean. There are busy days and lean weeks, furious customers and loyal regulars, but the bathhouse owner is always in demand. After all, no matter how often the church complains or the herbalist warns about armpit fever, everyone eventually comes back. Cleanliness is addictive, even if it's temporary. At the end of a long shift, you count your coins, sigh at your staff, and thank the saints for another day without a major disaster. And if the night brings another round of mysterious rashes, lost towels, or unexpected visits from the bishop, well, there's always tomorrow. In the medieval bathhouse economy, business is never just business. It's survival, spectacle, and a little bit of sudsy magic. Was it actually cleaner to bathe here? Or were you just rolling the dice on medieval immune systems? Spoiler: if you left with fewer parasites than you entered with, that's a win. The main selling point of the medieval bathhouse is simple: water, warmth, and hopefully, the illusion of cleanliness. But the truth is, every soak is a wager with fate. You're in a communal tub, swapping not just gossip, but microbes, fungi, and the occasional freeloading flea. Sure, you feel cleaner, but so did everyone else who left the tub before you. Their dirt is now your dirt. Their skin flakes now add flavor to the bathhouse broth. And if you catch something new, well, consider it the price of admission. For peasants who spend their days ankle-deep in mud and mystery substances, the bathhouse is a weekly reset button. After days of labor, nothing feels as heavenly as dunking your whole body into hot water, even if the water isn't exactly hot for long and hasn't been fresh since the last full moon. Compared to scrubbing yourself with cold rainwater in a leaky hut, the bathhouse feels like a 5-star spa. Of course, 5-star here means there are only 3 kinds of lice in the tub, instead of the usual 5. But cleanliness, medieval style, is a moving target. The prevailing wisdom of the day is that heat opens the pores, letting out bad humors and, with luck, letting in good ones. Doctors, priests, and your neighbor's cousin all agree sweating is healthy, scouring your skin is necessary, and if you're not at least a little pink and dizzy, you're not doing it right. Whether it's actually washing away filth or just rearranging it is anyone's guess. There are certainly benefits, at least, compared to never bathing at all. The heat and humidity can soothe aching muscles and ease the medieval backache that comes from a lifetime of hunching over fields or looms. The steam helps clear stuffy heads and, sometimes, temporarily evicts a few of the more enterprising bugs. Some bathhouses add herbs or flowers to the water for an extra sense of purification. Whether rosemary actually helps, or just hides the scent of last week's stew, is a matter of fierce debate. On the other hand, public bathing is a group project in hygiene roulette. You're trusting every person in the room to follow the unwritten rules. Rinse before entering, don't bring livestock into the tub, and, above all, do not mistake your neighbor's soap for a snack. But not everyone follows the rules. There's always that one guy who shows up straight from the stables, trailing a cloud of barnyard aroma and a suspiciously muddy left foot. Or the baker's child who treats the hot tub like a swimming pool, adding a fresh layer of flavor with every cannonball. If you're especially unlucky, you'll discover why public health officials exist. Outbreaks of skin infections, eye irritations, or the notorious itchy armpit syndrome sweep through town faster than the latest scandal. The wise bathhouse patron learns to avoid the most crowded hours, keep their mouth firmly shut underwater, and never, ever share a towel. Still, there's a kind of magic to it all. Maybe it's the communal suffering, maybe it's the hope that this time you'll leave fresher than when you arrived. Or maybe it's just the rare luxury of not being cold for an hour. People keep coming back, because in a world of relentless filth and constant work, even the chance of getting a little cleaner is worth the risk. So next time you emerge from the bathhouse, take stock. If you feel lighter, looser, and only mildly concerned about that new itch, consider yourself ahead of the curve. Medieval bathing, not a miracle cure, but hey, it beats scrubbing in a puddle and talking to your own lice for company. Medieval bathers were a superstitious bunch. People throw herbs in the water for luck, hang charms above the door, and whisper prayers that no one recognizes them when the steam clears. Before you even set foot in the bathhouse, you might find yourself pausing to touch a carved wooden talisman nailed above the entry, a crooked little figure meant to ward off bad spirits, snooping neighbors, and particularly judgmental priests. It's part tradition, part insurance. Some folks spit over their left shoulder before stepping inside, muttering something about keeping the soap sprites at bay. In a world where science means my cousin says it works, you do what you can. Once inside, the rituals only multiply. Every patron has their own signature superstition. A farmer might toss a handful of dried sage into the hottest tub, swearing it brings a better harvest. A widow drips lavender oil into her water to attract new love, or at least better-smelling company. Children sneak in tiny carved amulets, hidden in their fists, hoping for luck in the communal splash fight. Even the bathhouse attendant keeps a bundle of garlic tied to his belt, not for vampires, but for business prosperity. Or maybe just as a snack. There's a constant low-level hum of whispered blessings. Some people pray to their favorite saints, Saint Roch for protection from the plague, Saint Anthony for lost soap, Saint Jude for patience with the town gossip. Others stick to old pagan habits, humming a tune while circling the tub 3 times, or flicking droplets of water over their shoulder for good luck. The herbs floating in the bath water serve double duty. Rosemary to purify, mint for courage, marjoram for romantic success, or at least plausible deniability if caught in a curtained booth. You'll spot more than a few curious customs among the regulars. There's the old man who insists on tapping the rim of the tub 3 times before climbing in to warn the water spirits. The blacksmith who always wears his lucky iron ring, even when soaking, swearing it protects him from blisters and blabbermouths alike. Agnes, the baker's wife, has a superstition that if she enters the bathhouse last, she'll be the first to find out next week's secrets. Her strategy: always stall in the changing room. On holy days, rituals get even stranger. Someone might secretly sprinkle a pinch of holy water into the tub, just enough to keep out demons, not enough to offend the bathhouse owner, who would prefer to keep the steam secular. Thank you very much. When illness sweeps the town, mothers bring their children for a ceremonial purification dip, scrubbing vigorously and mumbling ancient rhymes about washing away evil. Of course, if the child comes out itching, the blame goes to mischievous water sprites rather than the questionable hygiene of the local shepherd. Superstitions aren't limited to keeping evil out. They're also about inviting good in. First one to blow bubbles gets a wish. Drop a sprig of thyme in the bath and you're promised good dreams as long as you don't accidentally eat it. Forget to hang your towel on the east wall. You're asking for rain at next week's market. Medieval logic is an unpredictable blend of faith, folklore, and it worked for my grandmother. These customs, odd as they are, turn the bathhouse into a kind of magical crossroads, a place where hope floats as much as the herbs. For a few copper coins and a handful of rosemary, you can protect your health, secure your luck, and maybe even catch a glimpse of romance or revenge, all before the water cools. Whether or not the magic works is beside the point. It gives you a reason to believe, to belong, and, just maybe, to keep coming back even when the odds and the lice are stacked against you. As you dry off and tuck your lucky charm back in your purse, you can't help but smile. In a world full of uncertainty, there's comfort in rituals, no matter how silly, strange, or soapy they might be. There are only 2 options: water so hot it boils your regrets away, or cold enough to guarantee you never come back. Some brave souls alternate between both, convinced it's good for circulation. Mostly, it's just good for shrieking. The moment you set foot in the bathhouse, you're forced to make a critical decision. Which tub do you risk your dignity and your skin in first? You watch as a burly farmer dunks his entire head into the hottest bath, with the stoic resolve of a man who's been burned by both love and lye soap. A second later, he emerges tomato red, steaming like an overcooked turnip, and gives a satisfied grunt. You're not sure if he's cleaner, but you do know he's probably just lost 3 years of memory to heat stroke. Meanwhile, the cold tub sits ominously in the corner. Nobody goes there unless they're desperate, showing off, or trying to prove a medical theory involving shocking the humours. The bravest or most foolish sprint from the hot bath, limbs flailing, and cannonball into the freezing water. The result is always the same: a yelp, a splash, and a sheepish laugh that turns into a hacking cough. Everyone politely looks away, pretending they didn't hear a grown adult squeal like a startled duck. There are those who claim that alternating between scalding and freezing baths is invigorating, restorative, or the secret to a long life. These are usually the same people who think chewing on garlic keeps away the plague and that leeches can solve heartbreak. The rest of the bathhouse crowd watches in bemused horror, clutching their towels and hoping nobody tries to drag them into a wellness fad involving temperature-based torture. On a good day, you aim for pleasantly warm. But this is medieval plumbing. Firewood shortages, inattentive apprentices, and the occasional bucket mishap mean water temperature is always a gamble. If the fire's been roaring, you'll feel like a poached egg. If the attendant got distracted by gossip, you're stuck with something that could chill the soul right out of your body. Either way, the only thing you can count on is inconsistency. There's a real art to finding the sweet spot. Some patrons hover at the tub's edge, testing the water with a trembling toe, then negotiating the slow descent with the grim determination of a general leading troops into battle. Others just accept their fate, hopping in and hoping their skin doesn't blister or their extremities freeze solid. As for children, they treat the temperature wars as a game, shrieking with delight as they race from tub to tub, entirely immune to both logic and hypothermia. When things get really out of hand, a temperature truce is called. That's when the attendant dumps a bucket of cold water into the hot tub, instantly producing a cloud of steam that engulfs half the room and triggers a wave of simultaneous complaints. In the confusion, somebody always loses their favorite seat. Someone else accuses the baker's boy of sabotage, and the lute player, if present, tries to calm everyone down with a rendition of hot cross buns, which does nothing to restore peace. Older patrons claim that temperature extremes build character. If you can survive the bathhouse, you can survive anything, the blacksmith declares, flexing his beet-red arms and winking at a nervous apprentice. And maybe he's right. After all, if your ancestors managed to endure this level of aquatic chaos and live long enough to pass on their questionable genes, maybe there's something to be said for a good, old-fashioned temperature shock. By the time you've made your way through both hot and cold and survived the chorus of shrieks, laughter, and motivational yelling, you feel oddly invigorated. Or maybe just numb. Either way, you're cleaner, slightly confused, and ready to wrap yourself in a towel that, hopefully, hasn't been soaked in either bath. And as you limp off to your next adventure, you realize, in the medieval bathhouse, it's not about getting the perfect soak. It's about surviving the temperature wars with your dignity mostly intact. A bathhouse is more than just a wash. Sometimes it's the venue for celebrations, negotiations, or a pre-wedding de-fleeing. If you've never been to a medieval bachelorette party, count yourself lucky. Forget fancy banquet halls and confetti. In the Middle Ages, if you want to mark a milestone, you head straight for the steam. Birthdays, engagement announcements, and every major life event, short of a funeral, have all, at some point, involved a communal soak. The reasoning is simple. Why wait until the church bells ring when you can celebrate with friends, food, and at least one hot tub that may or may not contain someone's pet goose? Bathhouse birthdays are legendary affairs. The guest of honor receives the rare privilege of first pick of the benches, ideally the warmest and least splintery one. Friends show up bearing gifts like special herbs, homemade soap, or, for the truly generous, a loaf of bread that hasn't been nibbled by mice. There are songs, laughter, and, inevitably, an accidental dunking as a birthday prank. Candles are banned for safety, so someone will simply singe a lock of hair and call it festive. The real spectacle, though, is the bridal soak. Every bride-to-be is paraded into the bathhouse, wrapped in the finest linen the family can muster, and surrounded by giggling friends and nosy aunts. The ceremony consists of vigorous scrubbing for purity, followed by a thorough lice inspection and liberal dousing with rose water, if you're lucky. If you're not, it's just rainwater and prayers for good weather on your wedding day. Someone will tell an embarrassing story about the bride's childhood. The oldest woman will offer marital advice no one asked for, and by the end, the future in-laws have either warmed to each other or are plotting who gets the good seat at the feast. Bathhouses also serve as the setting for business deals and political negotiations. Important news, like a new law, a tax change, or the outcome of last week's sheep race, is often delivered in the steam when everyone's too relaxed or too naked to argue too loudly. Agreements made here have the force of tradition. If you swear to pay back a debt while wearing only a towel, the gods and everyone else will hold you to it. At least until next week, children's milestones are celebrated with equal enthusiasm. The first time a child's hair is long enough to braid, or a son graduates from being carried in to walking in, is marked with splashes and songs. Grandparents reminisce about their own first soaks, conveniently leaving out how many times they slipped and landed in the herbal bucket. Of course, not every bathhouse celebration goes smoothly. The steam and excitement can quickly devolve into chaos. A dropped pie, a spilled mug of ale, a prank gone wrong involving someone's shoes and the cold plunge. Occasionally, celebrations end with a lecture from the bathhouse owner about excessive merriment and improper use of towels. But honestly, what's a party without a few minor scandals? Even somber news finds its way into the bathhouse. The loss of a villager, a failed harvest, or a tough winter is soothed in the company of friends, the warmth of the water, and the comfort of communal complaint. Here, people process joy and sorrow, loss and hope, all while sitting thigh to thigh with half the town. By the end of the day, the bathhouse floor is slick, the benches are warm, and the air is thick with laughter, stories, and a few confessions. You leave lighter, sometimes cleaner, sometimes just more tired, but always feeling like you belong. Because in the medieval world, every big occasion, happy or sad, deserves a little hot water, a lot of noise, and a healthy dose of humility. And maybe, just maybe, a new set of towels. At night, the atmosphere shifts, candles flicker, wine flows, and rules are flexible. What happens in the bathhouse, everyone finds out by morning. As the sun sinks and the town square empties, the bathhouse begins its transformation. Gone is the businesslike rush of daytime scrubbing and socializing. In its place, a warm glow spills out through fogged windows and laughter drifts across the cobblestones. The attendants set out a few battered lanterns, casting shadows that make every curve and ripple of steam look mysterious and possibly romantic. Even the most splintery bench takes on a glamorous shine under candlelight. This is the hour for the bold, the restless, and the easily bored. The regulars arrive in pairs or small groups, clutching pitchers of homemade wine, baskets of questionable snacks, and the sort of confidence that only grows stronger after sunset. The conversations grow softer, more conspiratorial, as voices drop to a murmur and secrets start to float as freely as the steam. Somebody always brings a lute, whether it's in tune or not is beside the point. A little music, a little singing, and soon the bathhouse sounds more like a medieval tavern than a spa. The official rules posted on the wall: no horseplay, keep your towel on at all times, no singing after midnight, are observed mostly in the breach. Someone proposes a round of towel whipping, a game only fun until someone loses a mug of ale or their last shred of dignity. An impromptu foot race through the changing room leaves a trail of overturned baskets, shrieks, and at least one mysterious puddle that no one will claim by morning. Night is also the time for storytelling. Ghost tales, love stories, and elaborate lies about who once met the king in the steam room are traded for sips of wine and rounds of applause. Anyone caught dozing is fair game for a practical joke. A cold splash, a missing towel, or, on really wild nights, an entire bench relocated out into the street. The bathhouse prank is a local institution, its rules unwritten and its traditions fiercely guarded. Some patrons seek romance, hoping the cover of darkness and the heady mix of wine and rosemary will lead to something more than a shared seat by the fire. The nervous, the hopeful, and the heartbroken all wander the steam-filled rooms, scanning the flickering faces for someone with a free hand and an open mind. Sometimes sparks fly, sometimes towels do, and sometimes all anyone remembers in the morning is a vague sense of excitement and the realization that their shoes are missing. Every so often, the owner pops in to issue a warning about decorum or respect for property. This usually lasts about as long as it takes for him to turn his back and for someone to start a round of communal singing, loud, off-key, and enthusiastic enough to scare the rats out of the pantry. Wine is spilled, bread is broken, literally, over someone's head, if the night is truly rowdy. And new stories are born to be recounted, exaggerated, and immortalized in bathhouse legend. By the time the candles burn low and the wine runs out, the bathhouse is a scene of damp exhaustion and quiet contentment. People stagger out in twos and threes, clutching each other and whatever belongings they managed not to lose. The floor is littered with breadcrumbs and memories. The air is heavy with the scent of herbs and cheap drink, and the benches, finally, get a few hours' peace. As you towel off, slip into the cool night, and make your way home, you can't help but smile. The bathhouse at night is a world apart, messy, loud, and full of fleeting joy. And in the morning, the sun rises, the steam clears, and the only rule that remains is, what happened here, everyone already knows. But somehow, it's still worth coming back next week. Every so often, the authorities get wind of too much fun and shut the place down for moral failings. Cue angry bathers, ruined reputations, and a spike in backyard bucket sales. It always starts with a rumor. Maybe someone's cousin's wife heard a little too much laughter coming from the steam room. Or maybe the town priest walked by and saw a suspiciously mixed group of bathers singing bawdy ballads after dark. Whatever the trigger, the local authorities, always ready to defend public virtue, especially if it involves a little drama, spring into action. The official line is that the bathhouse has become a breeding ground for temptation. The unofficial reason? Somebody's aunt got snubbed for the good bench last Thursday. The first warning is usually subtle: a pointed sermon, a new sign posted on the door, a visit from the city's health inspector, who just happens to be the bishop's nephew. Suddenly, the bathhouse staff are on high alert, tucking away the better soap, quieting the lute player, and enforcing no public displays of affection, which, in bathhouse terms, means no giggling louder than the steam kettle. The regulars exchange nervous glances. Everyone has a theory about what caused the crackdown: too many co-ed nights, a scandalous love triangle, or perhaps the infamous incident involving 2 buckets, a loaf of bread, and a wandering goose. But when the shutdown order arrives, it's rarely gentle. Town criers announce the closure, as if they're warning of an impending siege. The news spreads faster than fleas on a hot day. Bathhouse goers gather in the square, wrapped in towels and outrage, waving soap as a symbol of resistance. Protest chants are hastily composed, "Save our steam," while local poets pen laments for the lost luxury of a communal scrub. For some, it's a minor inconvenience. For others, it's the social disaster of the year. Reputations take a hit. The bathhouse owner is questioned, the staff are grilled, and regular patrons find themselves at the center of the latest gossip cycle. Did you hear that Old Man Bramble was spotted in the changing room with not 1, but 2 herbalists? Was Agnes really running a matchmaking service from behind the towel rack? How many marriages were saved, or ruined, by a single night in the steam? In the absence of actual news, the stories get wilder. By the end of the week, the bathhouse has been accused of everything short of summoning demons in the cauldron. Meanwhile, the practical fallout is immediate and itchy. The bathhouse may be closed, but people still need to get clean. Enter the age of backyard bathing. Suddenly, every bucket, barrel, and half-rotted washtub in town is put to work. Privacy takes a nosedive. As families negotiate tub times, children are marched into the yard for a scrub, and neighbors compare their own makeshift spa setups with varying degrees of pride and despair. Pop-up bathhouses spring up in alleys, while enterprising souls sell tickets for access to the largest watering troughs. Hygiene standards plummet, but the spirit of innovation soars. But even as the authorities bask in their brief victory, everyone knows it's temporary. As soon as the scandal fades, often faster than a bathhouse romance, the calls for reopening begin. Quiet negotiations are held, promises are made, fewer special evenings, stricter towel policies, a token attendance by the local priest. Someone donates a giant crucifix for the main room, just for show. Eventually, the bathhouse is allowed to reopen, freshly blessed and scrubbed within an inch of its life. The first night back is always the best. The laughter is a little louder, the water a little hotter, and the regulars a little more grateful. If anything, the scandal gives the place a certain mystique. Every steamy corner, every curtained booth, charged with the possibility of future excitement. Life in the medieval town returns to its messy, noisy, communal rhythm. Because in the end, you can close the bathhouse. But you can't keep people away from a little heat, a little scandal, and the age-old hope that maybe this time, the only thing you'll leave with is cleaner skin. Time to leave, but good luck finding a clean towel. You dry off with a rag that's older than you, then squeeze past a crowd of freshly bathed and only slightly less grimy townsfolk. The end of a bathhouse session is a spectacle all its own. After hours spent stewing, scrubbing, gossiping, and, in at least one case, surviving a surprise birthday pie to the face, you're suddenly reminded that every moment of relaxation must pay its price. That price? Wrestling with the medieval drying-off routine, a process as fraught as medieval banking, but somehow even less predictable. You approach the towel rack, only to find it's been picked over like the bread table after a famine. The good towels, the ones with both their corners and only a few questionable stains, were gone an hour ago. What's left is a stack of linen strips in various stages of disintegration. Some are suspiciously damp, some are best described as pre-cheesecloth. You grab one and hope for the best. Its scent is unique, like a blend of rosemary, wet dog, and hope. Drying off is less a methodical process and more of a frantic dance. You pat your arms, rub your legs, and try not to think about the fact that this towel probably predates the Black Death. The linen leaves streaks of questionable lint in your hair. It does its best, but mostly just rearranges the moisture. You do a quick mental calculation. Am I drier than when I started? The answer is technically yes. Spiritually, that's another story. Meanwhile, the exit is a bottleneck of freshly cleaned chaos. People jostle for space to reclaim their clothes, which have spent the last 2 hours absorbing steam and, in some cases, other people's soap. It's a fashion parade gone wrong. Tunics are inside out, belts have vanished, and someone is definitely missing a left shoe. You hope it's not you, but you wouldn't be surprised. The air is thick with post-bath chatter. Did you hear what happened in the hot tub? Did Agnes really bring a chicken in here? Why is my soap now half the size it was? The attendant stands by the door, collecting entry tokens and distributing what he optimistically calls fresh towels, which, at this stage, means anything that isn't see-through. He offers you a toothless grin and a helpful tip. Next time, bring your own. You do your best to wriggle into your half-dry, semi-clean clothes. Linen clings in all the wrong places. Socks are slightly damp, which, in medieval times, is just called normal. The communal changing bench is a battlefield, and if you leave with everything you brought, you've won the day. If you gain an extra sock, that's just the bathhouse gods smiling on you. Outside, the evening air hits you, a sharp reminder that you're not as dry as you hoped, and definitely not as warm. You shake your hair, hoping no droplets escape and hit your neighbor. The fresh, cool breeze is a shock, but also a relief. You inhale, smell only a hint of lingering rosemary, and realize it's the cleanest you'll be all week. Quitting time is a symphony of squelching footsteps, towel snapping, and awkward goodbyes. There's always someone who leaves in a hurry, trailing a bit of linen and a lot of unresolved embarrassment. Another lingers, reluctant to trade the warmth and chaos of the bathhouse for the quiet gloom of home. You trudge away, a little lighter, a little cleaner, and grateful you didn't end up with the towel that smells like pickled turnips. Tomorrow, the same routine will play out, different crowd, same shortage of decent towels, and the universal question, is anyone else still damp? Because in the medieval bathhouse, the art of drying off is less about perfection and more about perseverance. And honestly, if you can face the outside world with only a few damp patches and your dignity mostly intact, you're doing better than most. You stumble back into your scratchy clothes, collect your deposit, and re-enter the real world. Slightly cleaner, very damp, and absolutely full of fresh gossip to spread. The changing room is a chaos of tangled linen, half-buttoned tunics, and wet footprints tracking the events of the evening. Everyone is in a rush to pull on whatever they can find, whether it's their own clothing or something that just looks vaguely familiar. There's a ritual to it. Shake out your shirt to dislodge stray bits of rosemary. Tug on your hose and hope the damp spots dry by the time you reach the market, and make a silent prayer that the sock you're sliding on is actually yours. Odds are 50-50. People gather in small conspiratorial clusters, debriefing the night's escapades while squeezing into garments that haven't been fully dry since the last good harvest. The air is thick with the scent of steam, herbs, and the thrilling aroma of secrets. You overhear snippets of conversation. Did you see the baker's wife with the merchant? Was that really a chicken in the cold plunge? I heard the mayor's nephew can't hold his wine, and now the whole town knows. Even as you wrestle with your belt, you realize you're mentally noting every story for future retelling. In medieval times, information is currency, and the bathhouse is the best bank in town. As you fumble for your last shoe and untangle a suspiciously damp scarf, the attendant hands you your wooden deposit token, making a show of checking it against a long list of squiggly marks. It's more ceremony than security. You thank him, he grunts, and you both pretend this is a perfectly dignified exchange. With any luck, you'll walk away with everything you brought and nothing extra living in your sleeves. Dressed but still damp, you squeeze out into the cool night air, bracing yourself for the temperature drop. It feels like the steam is still clinging to you, swirling off your head like a halo of questionable hygiene. As you walk, the streets are alive with other bathhouse escapees, all sporting the same faint flush and dopey post-soak smile. Everyone's posture is a little looser, their footsteps lighter. If you listen closely, you'll catch the sound of bathhouse tales already spreading, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted across the street. Dodging gossip is a full-time job. If you left the bathhouse without making a scene, you might avoid being tomorrow's headline. If not, well, prepare for a week of pointed looks and sly grins at the bakery. Some people try to avoid attention, keeping their heads down and hurrying home. Others revel in it, strutting through the square and reliving their finest moments, usually with some creative embellishment. It's the original social network. No privacy settings, but plenty of filters, and none of them for cleanliness. As you wind your way home, you review the events of the night. Maybe you learned a new recipe from the blacksmith's wife, or picked up a few trading tips between splashes. Maybe you just got caught in the middle of a towel duel and now owe the butcher's apprentice a loaf of bread. Whatever happened, you carry it with you, stories, laughter, and, if you're honest, a little lingering itch you hope is just from the soap. Back in your hut, you peel off your still damp tunic, wrap yourself in the rough comfort of your own bed, and listen to the town outside, still buzzing with bathhouse chatter. You're exhausted, slightly pruny, and happier than you'd ever admit to anyone but yourself. Because in the medieval world, the bathhouse isn't just a place to clean your skin, it's where you cleanse your spirit, recharge your social batteries, and gather enough stories to last you until the next soak. And if you manage to dodge the juiciest gossip, consider it the cleanest escape of all. Congratulations! You survived the medieval bathhouse. Your skin is red, your hair smells like smoked onions, and you may or may not be free of parasites. But admit it, you're already thinking about next week's soak. As the sun creeps through the cracks in your shutter, you blink awake, stretching out across a lumpy straw mattress that's somehow both damp and scratchy. There's a peculiar soreness in your shoulders, a mix of aggressive exfoliation, surprise massage, and perhaps a leftover bruise from that over-enthusiastic towel duel. Your scalp tingles, but it's hard to tell if that's the rosemary oil at work or the after-effects of the Great Lice Migration of 1380. You roll out of bed, catching a whiff of yourself. It's not quite unpleasant, but there's definitely a new note of herbal funk woven through the usual bouquet of sheep, sweat, and whatever's growing in the corner of your hut. Bathhouse magic lingers, at least until your next barn chore. For a brief, shining moment, you feel different. Cleaner? Maybe. Lighter? Absolutely. Or perhaps that's just water loss from sweating in a room hotter than Satan's bread oven. You peer at your skin, still rosy from the combination of hot water and medieval sandpaper. There's a certain glow to you, the kind that says, "I survived," or possibly "I have mild steam burns." Your neighbors seem to be glowing too. As you pass them on your way to the market, there's a subtle camaraderie, nods exchanged, slight grins, and a mutual understanding that everyone's undergarments are probably still damp. But the big question remains, did any of this actually make you healthier? Medieval logic says yes. The bathhouse is touted as a cure-all. Body aches, melancholy, bad luck, even lovesickness. Healers swear by herbal steams and cold plunges. Priests preach about moral purification, as long as the bathhouse isn't too much fun. And your mother claims you'll catch your death of cold if you don't dry your ears properly. And sure, maybe the occasional round of hot water helps scrape off the worst of the grime, flush out a few toxins, and soften up a stubborn callus or two. On the other hand, there's the lurking suspicion that you've just swapped one set of germs for another. If you're lucky, you dodged the worst. No itchy armpit syndrome, no mystery rash, no sudden need to find the town's only half-competent barber surgeon. If you're unlucky, well, you'll know in a day or two. The best advice? Wait for any suspicious spots, and avoid sharing bread with the guy who sneezed in the cold tub. Mentally, though, you feel like a new person. Maybe that's the real bathhouse benefit. The joy of escaping routine, of letting off steam, literally and figuratively, with neighbors, rivals, and that one weird uncle who always brings a duck. Your mind is lighter. Your spirits are higher. You're armed with fresh gossip, 3 new turnip recipes, and a renewed appreciation for the people around you. After all, there's nothing like being crammed thigh to thigh with half the town to make you realize how sturdy and ridiculous medieval folk truly are. By midday, the magic is fading. Dirt creeps back under your fingernails. Your hair starts to wilt, and your towel, hung out to dry, is already attracting flies. But deep down, you know you'll be back. Next week, you'll brave the changing room chaos, the temperature wars, the towel lottery, and the bathhouse band's off-key serenade. Because despite all the risks, there's something irresistible about the promise of warmth, laughter, and the faint hope of cleanliness. And so, as you drift off to sleep again, Legs still tingling and mind swirling with stories, you realize the bathhouse didn't just clean your body, it rinsed your worries too. Healthier? Maybe. Happier? Definitely. And sometimes, in medieval times, that's the best prescription there is. Surprise, your steamy spa comes with security. The bathhouse employs at least one burly individual whose main job is to break up arguments, shush noisy teenagers, and politely evict anyone treating the communal pool like a dating app. If you thought today's lifeguards had it rough, try enforcing decency in a room full of slippery, wine-soaked patrons armed with wooden ladles. Meet the bathhouse bouncer. Part referee, part parent, part medieval diplomat. He stands near the warmest tub, arms folded, an eyebrow perpetually raised in suspicion, and with a towel slung over one massive shoulder, a symbol of both authority and, frankly, surrender. His true weapon isn't muscle, but the ability to deliver a soul-crushing glare that makes even the bravest baker's apprentice sit down and behave. In a world where chaos bubbles up with the steam, he's the one keeping the bubbles contained. His day starts early, policing the entrance for contraband. No livestock, no extra-large loaves of bread, and absolutely no exceptions, no smuggled bottles of questionable mead. He's the judge in the daily debate over who gets the good bench, the arbitrator of towel disputes, and the keeper of lost and found items that range from hand-carved combs to the occasional misplaced wedding ring. Nothing escapes his notice, though he'll never admit how often he pockets a lost sock for evidence. Inside, he roams the steam-filled rooms with the confidence of a lion tamer, who knows the lions are mostly just hungry peasants with boundary issues. When a group of teenagers starts a splash fight, he's there in an instant, wielding a broom like a conductor's baton, separating the combatants and handing out mop duty as punishment. He knows who's likely to push the rules, who will accidentally wander into the wrong gender's section, who can't resist a cheeky serenade after dark, and who is likely to attempt synchronized towel twirling after 2 mugs of wine. It's not all discipline. The bathhouse bouncer is also a peacemaker. When arguments break out over soap rations or seat hogging, he listens, mediates, and sometimes resolves the conflict by declaring, "Enough. Everybody switch benches." His booming voice cuts through the hubbub, and his word is law, at least until he turns his back and the baker's wife sneaks back to her favorite spot. He's especially vigilant during co-ed night, when the atmosphere shifts from mildly chaotic to full-blown carnival. His job is to keep the flirting playful, the songs clean, and the towel coverage adequate. If someone gets a little too enthusiastic with their massage, or attempts to sneak in a side of roast chicken, he appears like a ghost, firm but not unkind. His motto, "Save the scandal for the market." Of course, he has his soft spots. He'll turn a blind eye to old Agnes sneaking in her herbal remedies, or the blacksmith's son using 2 towels because he catches cold easily. But cross the line, try to paddle race with a soup ladle, or stage a wrestling match in the cold plunge, and you'll find yourself banished to the waiting room, doomed to listen to the lute player tune up for the 3rd time this hour. When the night winds down, it's the bouncer who makes sure everyone gets home safe, accounts for stray towels, and delivers the closing speech about respecting the establishment. He checks every room, chases out the last of the lingerers, and finally claims his own soak in the now empty tub, a rare moment of peace, until tomorrow's round of chaos. In a world without lifeguards, lifebelts, or even clear rules, the bathhouse bouncer is the unsung hero. If you manage to leave the bathhouse without starting a splash war or losing your towel, you probably have him to thank. And as you slip back into your damp tunic, you can't help but feel grateful for the one person who keeps medieval spa day from turning into full-blown medieval mayhem. Nothing inspires existential dread like realizing your only towel is gone. You swear you left it on the bench, but now it's vanished, possibly claimed by an opportunistic neighbor, or perhaps just dissolved by the steam. You're forced to dry off with a borrowed rag, an old tunic, or, if all else fails, by standing awkwardly in a draft until you're air-dried by public embarrassment. It starts innocently enough. You walk back from the warm room, hair slick with steam, skin tingling from an overzealous scrub, only to find an empty spot where your trusty towel once resided. You freeze, towelless, vulnerable, and already feeling the medieval panic set in. The communal changing room suddenly seems much more crowded, and every pair of eyes, real or imagined, feels like it's focused on your plight. You do a frantic double check. Maybe it slid off the bench, maybe it's under someone's spare tunic, maybe it's miraculously teleported itself into the lost and found barrel with the socks, combs, and one very suspiciously clean onion. No luck. Someone nearby shrugs sympathetically, offering a look that says, "It's happened to us all." The universal experience of towel loss binds the bathhouse community together in awkward solidarity. You spot a likely suspect, Old Bramble, notorious towel thief and serial borrower of anything not nailed down. But confronting a towel bandit requires the sort of bravery you haven't felt since you tried to pet a goose in mating season. You contemplate a trade. Offer him a chunk of cheese or a promise to vote for his daughter's pie at the next fair. All for the return of your beloved linen. Ultimately, you chicken out. Bramble's already got a faraway look in his eye, and a towel that somehow looks suspiciously like yours. Only wetter. Accepting your fate, you scan for alternatives. There's the community rag, a legendary piece of cloth that's been around since before the last Great Plague, and has the absorbency of a stone but the character of a legend. You consider it for a moment, then move on. Desperation, however, breeds creativity. Someone offers an old tunic, wool, scratchy, with a hole in the armpit, but at least it's fabric. You accept with the grace of someone who knows their dignity is already long gone. You dry yourself as best you can, using a mix of dabbing, flapping, and vigorous air circulation. Children giggle as you do the bathhouse dance, hopping from foot to foot while flapping your arms like a particularly distressed chicken. For a brief, glorious moment, you achieve a level of air-dried enlightenment that monks can only dream of, zen through embarrassment. Meanwhile, you become a part of the ongoing bathhouse saga, the case of the missing towel. Patrons debate possible culprits, invent outlandish theories. Maybe the towel simply achieved sentience and ran away, and promise vengeance, or at least a footnote in the next town ballad. Someone claims to have seen a towel matching your description being used as a makeshift sling for a sprained ankle in the cold plunge room. Another says the bathhouse bouncer confiscated it after a towel duel went sideways. In medieval times, towel theft is just another source of community entertainment. As the steam fades and the crowd thins, you accept your new, slightly damper reality. You squeeze past the crowd, awkward but not alone. Someone pats your shoulder in sympathy. Another offers you a scrap of bread as a consolation prize. You step outside, cool air prickling your not-quite-dry skin, but you can't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. By the time you reach home, you're mostly dry, and you have a story that will last far longer than the towel ever would have. Because in the medieval bathhouse, towels are temporary, but embarrassment is forever. And, let's be honest, so is the laughter that comes with it. Because why bathe in silence when you could do it to the sounds of a lute being played by a local bard who has never once tuned his instrument? Sometimes you're treated to a singer with more ambition than talent, or a spontaneous group chant about how much everyone hates Mondays. It's less healing soundscape and more medieval karaoke night. Music is an essential ingredient in the medieval bathhouse experience, just not the soothing spa-style melodies you might hope for. The main performer is the resident bard, a cheerful soul armed with a battered lute and an almost admirable disregard for musical accuracy. He perches on a corner stool, plucking away at strings that, by all rights, should have been retired when the last king died. Every now and then he pauses to retune, but the process seems more about optimism than science. When in doubt, he just strums louder. The song selection, ice eclectic. You'll hear lively drinking songs, tragic ballads about turnip famines, and, inevitably, at least one number involving a lovesick knight and an uncooperative sheep. Nobody remembers all the verses, but that doesn't stop anyone from joining in. Patrons hum, whistle, or simply mumble along, inventing new lyrics as the mood strikes. On particularly raucous evenings, half the bathhouse is singing, and the other half is plugging their ears with soggy linen. In between the lutes, you'll catch the occasional flute solo, usually from the bathhouse owner's nephew, whose musical talent is inversely proportional to his enthusiasm. The sound echoes through the steam, bouncing off damp tiles and mingling with the chorus of splashes and laughter. Sometimes, a drum appears, made from an upturned bucket and a sturdy spoon. The resulting beat is erratic, but the crowd loves it. If you're lucky, a visiting troubadour or traveling merchant might show up, bringing a new melody, a fresh verse, or at least a creative rhyme for itchy armpit. Bathhouse music is interactive by nature. When the lute strikes up a familiar tune, everyone joins in. Old women harmonize from the benches. Children improvise dance routines in the corners, and the bathhouse attendant occasionally contributes a bass line that sounds suspiciously like snoring. Group singing is the great equalizer, uniting nobles, peasants, and everyone in between in a chorus of good-natured noise. If someone hits a particularly bad note, it's met with laughter and applause, not criticism. In the bathhouse, enthusiasm always wins out over talent. There are classic bathhouse anthems: The Steamy Waters Lament, 3 Towels and a Dream, and the perennial favorite, Who Stole My Bread. On special occasions, birthdays, betrothals, or just a particularly lively Thursday night, the music is accompanied by impromptu dancing, clapping, and even towel twirling. The energy is infectious. Soon, even the shyest patrons are swaying along, forgetting for a moment their lack of rhythm, musical ability, or dry socks. Of course, not everyone is a fan. There are always a few grumps who retreat to the far end of the steam room, muttering about the youth of today and how the only true bathhouse music is the sound of hot water and silence. But even they can't resist tapping a toe or humming under their breath when their favorite tune rolls around. Because in the medieval bathhouse, music isn't just entertainment, it's community, catharsis, and a distraction from the realities of questionable water quality. As the night winds down, the music softens. The bard packs up his lute, pausing for one final, triumphant chord. The flute's final notes drift off into the night, and the last chorus echoes through the steam. The memory lingers, even as towels are reclaimed and clothes are donned. You leave the bathhouse humming, warmed not just by the water, but by the sound of voices, shared stories, and off-key harmonies that, somehow, make everything feel just a little bit cleaner. For an extra coin, the attendant offers you a dizzying array of spa treatments, from onion poultices for your sore joints, to mud masks made with actual mud, to a mysterious blue drink that might be medicine, mead, or mild poison. The line between healing and experimental chemistry is refreshingly blurred. If you thought a trip to the bathhouse was just about soaking, scrubbing, and swapping stories, think again. Every respectable establishment boasts its own spa menu, a collection of medieval treatments so experimental they'd make a modern dermatologist scream. The attendant, always eager to upsell, presents a basket of options with a flourish. It's part beauty routine, part survival challenge. First up, the famous onion poultice. It draws out the bad humors, the attendant claims, layering a handful of warm, squishy onions onto your aching knee. The smell is powerful enough to ward off lice, neighbors, and possibly evil spirits. The effect? Somewhere between oddly soothing and deeply regrettable. If you walk out without attracting a pack of stray dogs, you've beaten the odds. Next, you're offered a mud mask. Not the fancy kind. This is actual, straight from the yard mud, sometimes mixed with a few healing herbs or, if business is slow, whatever happened to be growing near the compost heap. It's cool and sticky and comes with the vague promise of detoxifying your humors. The attendant slaps it on with expert care, assuring you that even the Lord's wife swears by it. You're not sure whether that's a recommendation or a warning, but you're already halfway covered, so you let it happen, should you have a headache, or simply want to know what a bad idea tastes like. There's the mysterious blue drink. It's served in a battered mug and is cold, pungent, and slightly fizzy. Family recipe, says the attendant, heals all ailments. You take a cautious sip and immediately question every decision that's brought you to this moment. It tastes of elderflower, regret, and a hint of something metallic. But within minutes, your headache is replaced by a sense of euphoria or mild nausea. It's hard to tell which. Either way, it does the trick. Sort of. The menu only gets stranger. There's a herbal compress, a bundle of wilted greens tied together with twine, heated in the steam room, and slapped onto your chest with alarming vigor. Supposedly it draws out chest colds and bad luck. The apothecary's daughter offers a toothache remedy that involves holding a clove between your teeth and reciting a rhyme backwards. Does it work? Who knows? But the entertainment value is high. And so is your new appreciation for modern dentistry. For the boldest patrons, there are treatments so experimental they aren't even listed. A vinegar rub-down to make your skin glow like the moon, a garlic foot soak to keep away curses and most social interaction. Or, for a truly memorable experience, the bee sting facial, guaranteed to bring color to your cheeks, whether you wanted it or not. And then there's always someone who swears by the full package. Poultice, mud, herbal compress, blue drink, the lot. They strut around the bathhouse, glowing with the pride of someone who has both survived and slightly confused their immune system. Children gawk, adults whisper, and the staff discreetly watch for the first signs of fainting. Through it all, the bathhouse is alive with laughter, teasing, and the hope that, just maybe, one of these treatments will actually work. Or at least provide a story worth retelling over dinner. By the end, you're smeared, damp, and smelling like an apothecary's closet, but strangely content, because in the medieval bathhouse, the spa menu is less about perfection and more about participation. It's the belief that a little weirdness, a lot of mud, and a dash of communal bravery is the surest path to health. If not, at the very least, to some seriously memorable evenings. So tonight, as you sink into your clean sheets, surrounded by silence and the faint hum of your fan, spare a grateful thought for those who braved the medieval bathhouse. They endured shared tubs, floating mysteries, and the constant risk of towel theft, all in the name of cleanliness that would barely pass for a quick rinse today. You survived a journey where privacy was a fantasy, bathwater was a lottery, and the only thing guaranteed to be hot was the gossip, where being scrubbed by a stranger was considered luxury, and where you left only marginally less itchy than when you arrived. It was a place where health, hygiene, and hilarity all collided, usually in a puddle on the floor. Remember, these were people who faced life without antibiotics, without deodorant, and without so much as a personal loofah. They kept coming back for more, week after week, because hope, resilience, and a stubborn optimism that next time the water might actually be clean are the real legacies of the medieval bathhouse. So tonight, as you enjoy your hot shower, fresh towel, and the absolute miracle of soap that doesn't double as sandpaper, maybe whisper a little thank you to your ancestors. They endured more nudity, more awkward conversations, and a whole lot more germs than most of us will ever know, because history, for all its filth and chaos, is proof that humans are nothing if not creative, communal, and occasionally very, very ridiculous. And if they could find laughter in a crowded, steamy tub, you can surely find a bit of peace right now. Drift off, knowing that no one's about to snatch your towel or demand you share a bath with 3 cows and a bard. Sleep well, friends, and remember, tomorrow's bath is only ever as bad as the company you keep. Good night.